Vish, not long to go now until the first Ashes Test in Perth. What's your England team?
Okay, so that's cheeky because you've asked me first, and the big question is obviously who bats number three. It's been Ollie Pope under Stokes. Certainly when Stokes has been playing, Jacob Bethel's come in, and all I can think about is that the deciding factor in my head is which way is it better to average 34 over an Ashes series, and it might have to be the Bethel way.
So, and by that you mean, are you talking about the fact that Pope, he's obviously notorious as not a great starter? There's that sort of skittishness early in his innings. He typically has started series well recently and then tailed off as they've gone on. Is that the sort of big fear that's pushing you towards Bethel?
It is to a point. I also think there's a bit of the unknown with Bethel, which is only a good thing. And I say that as someone who doesn't necessarily believe it. But as ever with an Ashes series, there's always an element of baggage. And one of the things that Stokes and McCullum have tried to do over the last 3 years, but specifically this summer, even with the trip to of India, or the visit of India, is get everyone to start again. And Ollie Pope is probably the only person who has carried baggage throughout, in part because of all the different things he's been asked to do. Now, probably the only decision he's made off his own back was picking up the phone in May 2022, whatever it was, to call Stokes and say, I want to bat three. Everything since then, he's been trying to justify himself batting at three and done it well, averaging just over 40, specifically in that position. And then keeping every now and again, dropping down the order every now and again, and then captaining every now and again. So he's never really been comfortable. And because of that, I don't think he's ever been able to start again. He had a really bad series there in 2021-22. And while I do think he's a different player now, I don't think he's so different that Australia will have anything to fear. And they might fear a lad who can play the pull shot and looks dynamite as a left-hander. I don't know. There's no real logic to it, or certainly on the Bethel side, but that's probably where I'm at right now.
Yeah, he's now averaging 15 in his career against Australia, which maybe is a little bit harsh because, as you say, I think he is a lot better than the player that went there in 21-22. He did play one of those tests, actually. I think his highest score against Australia, which was a 40-odd at Lords, he did with a dislocated shoulder. So there is some mitigation for that record. But I tend to agree that I think they'll probably lean towards the new, exciting unknown rather than someone who, across his career, has shown a certain limited ceiling. I think the most damning stat for Pope at the moment is that he's never scored multiple hundreds in a series. And I think heading into a series like this one, I think England are going to want more from the number three. I guess one of the other big ones that I'm weighing up at the moment is whether or not England should pick a spinner. And if so, should it be Shoaib Bashir, who they've backed for a long time, or could they go the funky Bazball option of Will Jackson, number 8, on the understanding he probably won't bowl that much and would offer a lot more with the bat and in the field than Bashir?
Yeah, no, definitely. I think that's really interesting, particularly given a lot of the talk, certainly behind the scenes, and it's idle talk really, but it has been about hitting Australia full throttle that first test in Perth. And that only means one thing, that means pace. And Will Jacks does give them the option to, I suppose, just reinforce the batting and play, a more specialist seamer, certainly, one of their quicks. So I don't really know. It's very similar to the Pope Bethel conversation, isn't it? It's thinking of Bashir's floor and Jacks's ceiling without necessarily having seen Jacks's ceiling. I suppose know where it is, but I think they've given themselves that, I suppose that option in picking Jacks. I think it would really come down to Stokes. He's going to have the final say, and it might even be, 2 days before, as is their one when they announced their 11, before he puts pen to paper, I think he will think twice about it. I can't tell you which name he's going to put down, but history suggests it would be Bashir.
Yeah.
Because he always likes having a spinner. And I suppose a lot will depend on that warm-up game and in the nets as to whether he thinks Jacks could offer that role alongside Root if push comes to shove in a match situation where they might need to either rest their quicks or hit Australia with something a bit different.
I guess his own bowling fitness is going to be another
there you go, yeah.
big consideration. If he's not fit to bowl, is there a world where England play 4 seamers and rely on Root and Bethel as the fifth option? I think it's possible, but I mean, fingers crossed from England's perspective that Stokes is fit, because I think he showed over the summer against India that he's now, if anything, or he performed like a bowling all-rounder in that series. I think that's a huge part of it. I think there definitely is a school of thought that says you don't need a specialist spinner. You might not even need a spinner at all in Australia, but I think England will be a bit wary after not picking Leach for a couple of tests in 21, 22, I should say, which didn't go particularly well. And I think there is just that sort of workload element to it. I think you do just, Australia's a hot country. I think you need to remember that.
Yeah, it is. It is.
For a fast bowler, bowling 20 odd overs in a day is really, really hard work, particularly if you're having to come back all the time and there's not just a passage where you can sort of graze in the outfield. So I think from that point of view, I think they might end up leaning towards Bashir, who, even though his role isn't really to hold an end down, has shown that he's capable of bowling long spells.
Yeah, I think that's a great point, because the idea of holding up an end has changed under Stokes and McCullum, because when someone says that to you, you immediately think, right, economy rate, low twos. And actually, it's just, can you bowl 15 overs, 20 overs on the bounce? Yeah, sure. Don't matter about the runs. We can put a couple of boundary riders out, but just fill that 20 over gap. But the thing you touched on before, the other selection conversation is, which Ben Stokes are they going to be able to pick? And I think this summer has proven my own theory that he is a better batter when he bowls, because he is more involved in the game. I think sometimes his batting has been quite meek under his own captaincy, and I don't think it's anything to do with the captaincy. I think he finds it harder to get into games when he's just batting. But when he's bowling, there's a bit more aggression there. It's a bit more you versus me, and I think he takes that into his batting, and that's exactly the Ben Stokes England need out in Australia, and have only ever had once in the last 3 series.
And then I suppose the other big question is balance of the pace attack. Let's assume that Stokes is fit. There has been this chat about hitting Australia with pace. Does that mean Wood, Archer, and potentially Atkinson as the third for you? How do you see that balance?
I like that idea in principle. It's a bit like when you play a football video game or a sports video game. You're like, I'm going to put everyone with 90 plus skill. I'm going to play all of them. And actually, as much as England would want to hit them with pace, and I'm not saying this bowler is slow, but he certainly doesn't fit into that bracket. But I feel like Bryden Cast has to play basically every live test, ideally every test. And so with that, I don't really know which of the two you swap out in Wood and Archer. That decision might end up being made for them if Mark Wood isn't able to make that first test. But I'd be really tempted to play Cast, I think he's that bowler who bowls that length consistently, high pace, very aggressive as well, not just with how he delivers the ball, but I suppose his general vibe. And I don't know, he's quite scary. I think we can say that. He's not here in the room with us, but he's quite scary. And I think that does matter in some respects. So I think my temptation would be one of Wood or Archer, Atkinson, Cast.
Yeah, I think I'd go Cast as well. I think he bowled a lot better than his numbers suggested against India this summer. And I think that bank of performances he put in at the start of his test career last winter, this time a year ago, firstly in Pakistan and then also in New Zealand more notably, I think it showed exactly what you need for an Ashes tour, being able to charge in all day. So I think I would agree with that. I'd be tempted to say that Josh Tongue could play a big role at some point in the series, but I think you're right that if Archer and Wood are both fully fit, I think there still might be a temptation to pick them both. But my personal attack, I'll probably go Archer and Atkinson, new ball, and Cast as the first change with Stokes supporting.